Welcome back to another episode of Palisade Radio. This is your host, Colin Cattell, and as you can see on our screen, we've got returning guest on the program, Jeff Berwick. Jeff is the founder of the Dollar Vigilante. Jeff, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, great to talk to you again, Colin.
Jeff, I want to extend a thank you for inviting me to speak at your Dollar Vigilante conference, which is going to be held just preceding your Anarcho-Polko conference. So the TDV conference is February 24th of 2017 in Acapulco, followed by a 4-day conference, Anarcho-Polko, which you've thrown for a couple of years now and is really growing in size. I know this year is going to be your biggest one. You're hosting that now at the 5-star Mundo Imperial in Acapulco. It's grown so quick, you've had to find a new venue. Jeff, briefly, can you tell us what we're going to expect at the TDV conference and the Anarcho-Polko conference?
Yeah, Colin, I'm really glad to have you at the conference. We've been friends for a while now. I've been following your work. I really respect your work. I see you as one of the sort of up-and-comers, the young guys that's really moving and shaking after, you know, all the old sort of people who were in this sort of market, the gold market, gold stocks, things like that. A lot of them got kind of older or just passed away or just retired, and you're sort of the new up-and-comer, so I'm really happy to have you there. Of course, we're going to have so many other people. Ed Bugos, of course, the senior analyst of TDV, who's had just an amazing year in his portfolio, is up about 200% over the last year. It's been down lately with what's been happening over the last few months, but it's still up about 100% in the last year. We're also going to have David Morgan, the silver investor, probably the brightest guy in the silver market. He's going to be speaking. We're going to have Bix Weir there, a really interesting guy who looks at all kinds of different theories about what's going on. We're going to have Bob Murphy of GATA, who's just been a great crusader on all the gold manipulation stuff, which a lot of that conspiracy theory is becoming conspiracy fact. I think it was Deutsche Bank just got in trouble for manipulating the gold market just recently, and many others at the Dollar Vigilante conference. Then afterwards, it's pretty much a whole week of sort of a narco-capitalist in entrepreneurship, investment, and freedom-related things at Anarcho-Polko. And we're actually going to have one full day just on cryptocurrencies and blockchain investment opportunities with all the biggest people from the Bitcoin space, including Roger Ver, called the Bitcoin Jesus, Trace Mayer. We're going to have a number of entrepreneurs who are coming, including people like Christopher David of Arcade City, which is sort of a blockchain-based Uber. We're going to have Dan Larimer, the founder of Steam, which is a blockchain-based social media site. All kinds of interesting investments and opportunities the entire week here in Acapulco.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm sure that the type of people that the conference attracts is just a really great group to network with and to get to know, and probably quite a few friendships have been forged along the way. So really looking forward to that, Jeff. Now, last time I had you on the program was just a couple months back. Gold was in the midst of a very nice rally. The gold stocks, as you pointed out with Ed Bugos' portfolio for the Dollar Vigilante, up significantly this year. We've now had a bit of a pullback. I don't think it's out of the ordinary, but what's your take now that we've been about 12 months into this bull market?
Yeah, almost exactly 12 months, because it really began on January 1st of 2016. I found that kind of interesting, that very first day of January is when exactly gold and silver started to take off, and they had a phenomenal run for the first half of the year. They pulled back, as you mentioned, and of course the precious metal stocks had a phenomenal year. It's pulled back in the last few months, which you say, and I agree, is probably quite normal to have a pullback after that staggering run it had. We had investments in things like Nugget, NUGT, which is a leveraged bullish play on the gold stocks, which is up hundreds of percent. I don't even remember how many hundreds. It was a lot. It's pulled back since. It's very interesting. I think what's going on has a lot to do, there's much more going on than just your normal state of affairs. I think this entire Trump winning the election, or selection as I call it, is quite interesting. He actually said before the election that if he gets elected, they will probably tank the stock market after he gets put into office. And I actually think that might be quite possible. And it's very interesting. We've seen the markets go up since he got selected. And we actually are just days now away from the Fed meeting, where they're likely almost absolutely have to rate hike rates. Sorry, got a little bit of a mental block there. Hike rates probably this week. Of course, the market's totally expecting it. But if you remember, it was exactly a year ago. That was the first time they hiked rates. Was in December of last year, 0.25% after having it at 0% for about 7 or 8 years, and it nearly crashed the entire worldwide stock market. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're on the cusp of some big things happening. I think it's sort of the quiet period at the moment. We might see after this rate hike, we might see a lot of things starting to shuffle, and then we might see them pull the plug on the stock market, which is at nearly all-time highs in terms of earnings, PE ratios. I think the only time it was higher was in 1999 with the tech bubble. So there's a lot of things that I think are probably going to change in the next few months, and I think it's probably going to be very bullish for gold and gold stocks.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Jeff. My world's been a little bit crazy the last couple months since Trump's gotten selected, as you say. Many gold bugs haven't taken note because they don't pay attention necessarily to the other commodities out there. But there's been quite a bit of movement that hadn't happened. Back 4 years ago, you had almost all the commodities. Oil took a couple years longer, but they all kind of started to crash at the same time. And then in January, when the gold price started to move, it kind of moved by itself, that and silver and a couple of the other commodities. All of a sudden, you're seeing iron ore prices move. Things like met coal and thermal coal, which it seemed like were a dead industry, starting to move. Oil, of course. We even called a bottom in the uranium sector last week. Jeff, what do you make of the movement in overall commodity prices?
I actually don't follow them as much as Ed Bugos does, but he was telling me that we've gotten confirmation from silver, but we're not getting confirmation from other commodities at this moment in time. So he's actually, I just spoke to him before this call, and actually I'd prefer if he'd come on with you, but he's kind of camera shy or microphone shy, and he's also incredibly busy. But he was telling me that he's very unsure at this moment in time. We're seeing stocks go higher and the dollar go higher, and that's a whole other topic as well, is the dollar. There's so many things going on right now, and that's why it's so important to be paying a lot of attention. And when I say paying attention, not watching CNBC, because they're not going to tell you any of this stuff, but what's going on in Europe right now with the Eurozone in a state of collapse. We've, of course, had Brexit, which hasn't really happened, but the people voted for it, and they allowed it to go through, but it hasn't really happened. Now we have places like Italy and other places that are looking at, and actually almost every country in Europe is looking at getting out of the European Union now, which I think is driving the dollar higher. Obviously, the euro going lower as people don't know what's going to even happen with the euro at this point. So there's so many things going on. So it's very difficult. This is incredibly difficult times for investors. I don't think I've ever in my 20 or 30 years of being involved in the market, seen a more difficult time, because there's so many massive things going on and so many massive things that can affect everything that it is very difficult. But we've managed to really make our way through this market because we're paying attention to all these things. So, for example, with Deutsche Bank, our senior analyst Ed Bugos had a great call on it. We've been covering it. Obviously, Deutsche Bank's in big trouble if you look at their stock, if you look at the amount of leverage and debt they have, and it's just falling apart. But we actually played it with a sort of a hedge. We bought calls and puts out of the market on it because basically either Deutsche Bank is going to collapse and go to zero, or it's going to be bailed out. And because you don't really know, it's very hard to say what they're going to do. We played our bets, and we actually made, I think, 200% in the last few months on Deutsche Bank because it actually did rise. So we bought puts and calls on it. The calls went up 500%, and the puts lost 200% or 300%, something like that. So it was about 200% gain on that. That's the way you have to play these markets right now. This is not your normal time. This is not your time to just buy some mutual funds from your government registered financial advisor and just hold them for a few years. You have to be very awake and very aware of what's going on if you want to survive and profit in this market.
Well, Jeff, your readership's extremely large, so I'm always keen to hear what yourself and Ed Bugos are suggesting. And of course, we will get Ed on the show at some point. He is very busy, but looking forward to that when that does happen. I want to get a feel for what you're suggesting. You pointed out that it's very difficult right now. It is. People like you and me have been saying that the Dow Jones is inevitably going to top off for a couple years now, and it just keeps marching on. And so that saying that the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent is very true. true that going short on the Dow right now could potentially lay ruin to a portfolio. Who knows how much higher it's going to go before it crashes? What kind of bets are you putting out to people in your network that you think, from a general standpoint, makes sense right now?
Well, really, the economy is not doing well at all. It's actually been going down in general since the year 2000, but it's been papered over with all this money printing, all these quantitative easing. So when we're very negative on just investing in the overall stock market, we've been that way for about a year or two now. Ed Bugos was one of the only people sort of in our space who really liked gold and things like that. He was very bullish on the U.S. stock market after 2009, and he was very bullish on it up until about a year or maybe a year and a half ago. But we never put massive bets on the stock market crashing, but because of the monetary inflation. And what we're actually seeing in the last few months is the Federal Reserve has begun printing more money again. It's been hovering around 7 to 9% for a couple of years now, but it's going back up again. And actually 7 to 9% is already massive. That totally screws up price discovery in the marketplace. But a lot of people who watch our videos, who listen to us online, might think that we think the Dow is going to 5,000 or 6,000. It actually could go to 60,000 because they're going to print that much money. It's either or. It's the same sort of situation as Deutsche Bank was. Is if they bail it out and if they print more money, then the Dow is going to go to 30,000. If they don't, it'd probably go down to 6,000 or 8,000, or even lower actually. But so you have to hedge your bets and play these things. This is, like as I pointed out, it's just a very difficult time, and your average person just has no chance in these markets unless they just get lucky, because there's so many things going on and so many very radical, extreme events happening and about to happen that you just have to be very careful. And that's one reason that I just really like precious metals, and also things like Bitcoin and hard assets, is just get a lot of your money outside of the markets. Although the one thing that I think can do incredibly well and has done very well for us in the last year is precious metal stocks. That's about the only stocks that I personally am bullish on. But even then, you have to be very careful, as you know, Colin. That's a whole market to itself. So it's this is the world we live in right now. It's absolutely unbelievable. You don't know what these central banksters are going to do, although it looks like, and they just continue to print money and they continue to keep interest rates down around 0% or negative, which they are in many places in Europe, which is absolute Keynesian insanity. We're living in an absolute insane time. Even Nathan Rothschild, a guy who should know, his family started all these central banks, came out a few months ago and he said, I don't know what's going to happen. We've never been at negative interest rates before. We've never had a moment in time like this. And he predicted that it's all just going to probably collapse at some point. And that's pretty much, anyone who's smart can kind of see that. We're going to have a massive collapse, but the collapse could be hyperinflationary. So you could see the Dow go to 20 or 30 or 40,000. But if that's how you're gauging how well the economy is doing, then you're not very smart, because you have to pay attention to how much money they're printing. So if they're going to go ahead and do another round of quantitative easing once the markets go down again, maybe after this next rate hike, or maybe right after Donald Trump is put into office in the Oval Orifice, as I call it, we could see the markets go down, and then they just print up tons more money. This is just what central banks do. If they don't, we'll see the markets have the worst crash in human history. If they do print money, we're probably headed towards hyperinflation over the next few years.
Jeff, and I want to end with Bitcoin. This is something that we don't talk about too much on our show because we're gold focused, but there's a lot of similarities between the two assets. Gold, of course, can be held in one's hand, whereas Bitcoin is a little bit more elusive and harder to wrap one's head around. It lives in the virtual world. Where's a place in your portfolio for Bitcoin as opposed to gold, and how's Bitcoin been doing?
I see them both as being two things that you should own. Gold absolutely is a store of value. It has been throughout human history. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But the problem with gold is it is physical. And that you actually mentioned it as being a positive, but it is also a negative, as people in India are finding out right now, where they just canceled 80% of all the fiat currency, and they're now trying to confiscate gold. And that's, of course, been done in the US in 1933. So when you have a physical item and you have all of these mafias, these giant extortion gangs around the world called governments, who are all in a state of collapse, they're going to grasp and try to take whatever they can from their tax slaves. And gold has been a natural one over time for them to do. So for that reason, gold is something you have to be careful with, and that's why we actually wrote a book called Getting Your Gold Out of Dodge, which we're actually offering for free right now. If anyone wants to get it, I believe it's dollarvigilante.com/GYGOOD, which is just short for Getting Your Gold Out of Dodge. We're offering it for free to help people to internationalize their precious metals, so they get it outside of the control of the government who claims to own you, to make it harder for them to confiscate. But the other side of it is Bitcoin, which is a new currency, which is doing phenomenally well. It started in 2009. I got into it in 2011 at about $3. It's currently around $700. I really pounded the table on it last summer when it was around $250, saying this is the time to get in. It's now around $700. We live in a digital age now, and this is a currency that the governments cannot confiscate. It doesn't actually exist anywhere. It exists in the so-called cloud. There's no place it actually exists. There's no office for them to go to. There's no CEO for them to arrest. And that's what's beautiful about it. Of course, you need energy and the internet for it to work, though. And so if they turn off any of those, which governments might do, they keep talking about the internet kill switch. That's how dangerous these governments are, that we still have roaming this world. That is an issue. So it definitely is an issue. And of course, it is a new currency. It's been around only now for 7 or 8 years, or 7 years. So I guess 8 years, 2009. I went to public school. I can't do the math in my head. But it's doing very well. It's still, in my opinion, very undervalued compared to where it could be going. It's gaining a massive amount of usage. The usage just continues to go up. People are just starting to use it. If people out there haven't even looked into it, you have to look into it. To me, I was around when the internet started in 1993, 94. And I was telling people back then, you have to get into anything to do with the internet. This is going to be the future. And I say the same thing about Bitcoin now. Just if you don't know about it, just get some. Go on an exchange. If you're in the US, go on Coinbase, buy some Bitcoin, and then just start using it. You can actually get a credit card, and you can use your Bitcoin just like you use a normal credit card or debit card. You can go to an ATM machine, take out fiat currency if you want it for Bitcoin. So you can actually download one of those, or get one of those cards at dollarvigilante.com/ecoin is one that I personally use, and I like it a lot. But yeah, no, I think it's all important. Get most of your money outside of the fiat currency system, outside of the financial system, outside of the stock market, except for precious metal stocks and maybe a few others, including energy to some extent and things like that. But otherwise, general stocks, get out. This is at all-time highs, almost all-time highs in terms of earnings, price-earnings ratio. It's got nowhere else to go but down from here. It might go up in terms of fiat currency, but in nominal terms, it won't. It'll just in real terms it won't. In nominal terms, it might. So as I mentioned, everything's kind of dangerous right now, and that's what I predicted since I started the Dollar Vigilante in 2010. Is you just got to be thinking outside the box. You got to protect yourself. You got to be smart. But if you're smart, you can make fortunes. And as I mentioned, I am very bullish on gold stocks over the next few years, and I think gold and silver will rise dramatically over the next few years. And as those do, the gold and silver and precious metal stocks will rise exponentially.
All right. Well, one more time, I will be speaking at the TDV conference, the Dollar Vigilante conference, February 24th in Acapulco. That's to be followed by the Anarchapulco conference from the 25th until the 28th, which I will also be in attendance. That's at a beautiful resort down in Acapulco, which is Jeff's home. I've been there before, and it's fantastic. And Jeff, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Really looking forward to seeing you in February in person and absorbing all of the information that's going to be shared there.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to you seeing it as well, Colin. I know you're going to love it. So many amazing people. And if people want to check it out, just go to tdvinvestmentsummit.com. That's for the Dollar Vigilante conference. And then the next 4 days after that is in Acapulco, full of just amazing people talking about liberty, entrepreneurship, investment, things like Bitcoin and blockchain opportunities. Just go to anarchapulco.com. And I'm looking forward to seeing you here, Colin.
Think you understand the junior mining sector, and you think that the participants in the mining sector, junior mining sector, are good people and kind people, hit the bid.
How violent that term could be? It actually could be quite violent. It could be a rip-your-face-off uranium rally.
And the world is always going to need raw materials. It's going to need copper and gold and nickel and so forth.
Totally destabilized. Hey, Troll, did you hear what's going on in Yemen? Or are you too stupid?